Noah, you have been called the voice of peace for your activism on diplomacy, dialogue, and coexistence. So, for starting this session, I would like to ask you, how do you see art? What do you do that is cultural diplomacy, and how that can really provoke change?
Ooh, well, that's a big one, right? Well, why do people actually hate each other? Let's think about that for a moment. Why do they start fighting against each other? I think the number one thing is fear. People are afraid. Fear is our enemy. So you're afraid somebody will take something away from you, right? You're afraid they'll take away your land, your identity, your water, your God. You're afraid that someone will threaten what you think of yourself. You're just afraid. You're terrified, actually. So terror leads to violence. Terror is violence, terror in the form of terrorism. But fear and terror lead to violence. So what can make you not afraid, actually? What is the thing that will make you not afraid? And then maybe avoid that violent circle. I think that one of the things that can eliminate fear is when you realize that the other person is just like you. They're also very fragile, they're very vulnerable, they're afraid of dying, they're afraid of losing the things dear to them like their parents or their children or their livelihood, they're afraid of starving to death. Everyone is in the same boat. So how do you actually make people realize that they're the same? I think that one of the important and valuable tools is art itself. Because what does art do? Think about that for a second. So art, I've always thought, artists have these two things that they do at the same time. First, they stick their hands in the mud, right? We stick our hands in the mud, in the guts, in those places which are painful and awful, where we want to cry, where we've lost love, where we've lost something dear to our souls, when we're devastated, when those places, all the great songs come from tragedy. So artists love drama and tragedy. So that's down there in the belly when it hurts. But then on the other hand, we spread our wings and fly, and we soar in the air. We're happy like children. We play. It's not playing music, it's playing. It's joyful. So we're in the mud and we're in the air, and those are intrinsically human things. They make us feel human. They make us feel like children, make us feel vulnerable, and they make us feel the same. So when we have that sense of unity and oneness in communication, I think that we're very much less prone to hating each other and fighting wars. That's one of the great values of art. It enables people to somehow speak for a moment, and I'm definitely not the first person who said that, the same language, just for a moment, and tears down the Tower of Babel. And another beautiful thing that Leonard Bernstein said about art is that art ennobles people. It raises them up. It makes their spine longer, makes them feel, wow. And in that state, they can do things. So art doesn't change the world, but it changes people, and people change the world.
Beautiful, beautiful words. Thank you very much. So,
Gil was reminded me of a beautiful thing in Hebrew. In Hebrew, the word for Hebrew, for violence in Hebrew, is alimut. Alimut. And in the middle of that word, we have the root, elim. And elim means muteness. So when we don't talk, when we are mute, we become violent. When we don't communicate, when we don't learn about each other, when we don't look at me across the border like that song I sang, that's when we become violent. If you can keep the communication going, talk as much as you can, you have a chance of eliminating violence.
Such a powerful message. So I'm going to go with Gil. So Gil, you co-founded the Raymond School of Jazz and Contemporary Music and co-founded the School Computer-Aided Music Program. So I would like to ask you, how do you think music can be a catalyst for change and especially for communities?
Wow, again. Well, first of all, it's not that heavy a challenge because we are only supposed to be a catalyst. And the catalyst for change is the change of heart. You have to change the state of mind of people. And the idea is that music, just like art, just like Noah says, in her words, it opens the hearts, it ennobles people, but it makes them look at things differently. Remember when you go into a gallery or a museum for a 2-hour visit or 3 of paintings and sculpture, the minute you walk out, everything looks like art. Every trash bin or tree, because your perception changed. Because what art is a mode of perception. It's not the thing. It's a way to look at things. It's about framing and reframing ideas. And music is the same with notes, different material, different medium. So art makes mush your mind, makes possibilities for reframing, for looking at things differently. And that is an opportunity, because in that moment is an opportunity to sneak in and bring you messages that you're ready to accept. Whereas in the daily functioning mode of your brain, you're blocked. You hear the words, they don't come in. But when that moment of transition of modes of perception, that's the opportunity. That's what she's doing.
Oh, wow. Beautiful words.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for that. So currently, you dedicate much of your time to the relationship between cultural diplomacy and leadership and the climate crisis. One of the main projects you are leading focuses on the preservation of the unique coral reefs of the Gulf of Aqaba, named Reef of Hope. Tell us more about this project and why it's very important for you.
Well, okay. So I guess before I answer that, I will go a little bit back. Because it's important to say that I started my activism. We started our activism in 1995. We started it when Yitzhak Rabin was murdered in an enormous, amazing peace rally where we were singing on stage. It was a happy moment. We believed that Israel could finally achieve peace with her Palestinian neighbors. It was a great moment of happiness. We all believed in that. And Rabin was an extraordinary man, and Shimon Peres, and they were on stage. Rabin was singing, we were singing. It was so happy. 10 minutes later, we walked down the stairs. 5 minutes later, he walked down the stairs and was murdered by a Jewish settler. For me, this was a devastating moment beyond belief. I just couldn't believe it. And I decided at that moment that if he could, pay with his life, I would also be willing to pay a price. Hopefully not with my life, though you never know. I got a lot of threats to my life. But I wanted to pick up that torch that had fallen to the floor and run with it, because I so deeply believed that the only way to secure a future for Israel and for Palestine was through peace. War, we had tried. We know how to make war. I served in the Israeli army. My children are serving. My husband, my father, all of us. We serve in the army. We know how to do that. But that's not what we want to keep doing. We'll only do it if it's an absolute necessity. And peace is a much better option, respectful, dignified option for humanity. So I so deeply believed in that I started saying it all the time. And I'm not a politician. I'm not very politically correct. I said some hard things. They came from my gut. I put my hands in the mud and I said what I believed. So that's what started the activism. For many years, Gil and I were mostly involved in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and also with all of the Arab world. We really, truly wanted to build bridges, and we did so with music. It brought us here to Davos. I actually won the Crystal Award as a result of that activity, and it was here in Davos that we performed with Palestinian artists on stage. We had amazing opportunities. Then there was 9/11. And Davos moved to New York. That's where we met Quincy Jones, and the Ave Maria was performed there, one of the songs that has been with me. So human rights, equal rights, women's rights, and mostly peace between Israelis and Palestinians has been a huge focus on our career. So what brought us to climate? And that's, I'm now swinging into the climate thing. It actually started with a conversation with a man that I think is in this room. He said he would come. Tal Ronen, there he is. Yeah. Hi, Tal. So Tal Ronen is an amazing person, and he's here in this room. And he's actually here with a group of people from the SDG lab that we visited yesterday, which is an amazing group of people thinking about sustainable development goals. There's SDG Israel, I have to mention, that I really am excited about, with a lot of incredible solutions, both from the technological world and the financial world, and there's a community, and it's exciting. This is what we should be focusing on. But Tal was doing this many, many years before most people. It's a little bit like Al Gore. Those people were saying these things, and only very few of us were really listening. But now everybody's listening. So I remember I was involved in this, one of the other big peace projects I was trying to put together, and I approached Tal, and Tal said, well, Achinoam, my full name is Achinoam, that's really admirable and great and good luck, but you should really be thinking about the climate, because that's like way, all the other struggles are going to become almost irrelevant if the world is going to collapse. You have a voice, use it for the climate. And I said, okay, that's interesting, but I was not ready yet at the time to really embrace that. But now I am. So 2 years ago, I visited the Red Sea, an amazing place called the Inter-University Institute of Marine Biology, Marine Studies, in Eilat, Israel. Eilat is the city that is right at the tip of the Red Sea, the northern Red Sea, just across from Aqaba in Jordan. And this is an incredible research center, and I met a man by the name of Professor Maoz Fine. And this man told me about the research that he was doing, that he spearheaded, but is now quite profuse around the area in many scientific institutions, saying that the corals of the northern Red Sea were the most resilient in the world to the rising temperatures of seawaters. And actually, they had the best chance of surviving in the next 50 years, more than any other coral reef in the world. And I said, oh my God, that's amazing. So, wow. As a child, I remember, I grew up in New York. I came to Israel following a love that I had for a teenager, at the age of 16. And that's when I visited the Sinai Desert for the first time. And I remember the amazing sensation of putting my head with a mask into the water. The Sinai, it's a desert, it's bleak. There's nothing there. You can see the blue sea, but you have no idea what's going on under that water. It's amazing, beautiful, wow. I tried to yell. I remember trying to yell, but you can't yell with a snorkel. So I was blown away. So for years, I've loved snorkeling, scuba dive, and everything. So then Maoz tells me about this amazing quality of these reefs. And I say, well, we have to embark on a project to protect them. And how are we going to do that? He said, yeah, there's this reserve, this bioreserve. I said, yeah, but that's not enough. It has to be something much more significant than that. And I told him, well, why don't we try for UNESCO Natural World Heritage? That's significant. Why is it important? First of all, because it's an international institution with a lot of prestige. And in the Middle East, prestige goes a long way. We really, respect. That's important to people in our area. And besides, another thing about the Middle East, we function really well when we're being observed. When we're not, we go to sleep in the desert sun. But if the world is looking at us and everybody's looking at us and we're looking at each other, there's a better chance that we'll actually get the work done. And I thought to myself, wow, look here. There's this amazing opportunity for diplomacy. Because in order for this status to be achieved, and it's a long process, it's not easy, then 4 countries would have to apply together. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Israel. Now, what an amazing thing that would be if we could actually pull that off, getting them to agree on something. And not to say, and this is very important to note, if we were to agree on saving the corals of the Red Sea, that doesn't mean that everything's okay and that we don't have to fight to solve all the other problems and that the Israeli-Palestinian issue is not critical and I personally will continue like Jeanne d'Arc to fight for it. But here, at the same time, is something that critically needs our help. This beautiful, amazing ecosystem, which supports the livelihood of millions of people. I don't think you're aware how many millions of people depend on the reefs in the Sinai Desert alone. Egypt, for example, has more income from these reefs than from the pyramids. It's one of the large, and this is a poor country that really, really needs those beautiful reefs. Not to mention the fact the world needs them for research, for everything that they represent. So that's how this crazy thing started, and I became obsessed with it. Yeah. Obsessed, really. That's all I could think about. And we really, we opened a lot of doors. We created a scientific conference hosted by our friends at Frontiers in Lausanne, amazing group of people. We brought scientists from all over the world. We wrote a white paper. It is with some of the most important marine biologists in the world, including marine biologists from the region. So we had a Saudi, we had a guy from Sudan, we had a Jordanian and an Egyptian sitting around the table agreeing on the value of these reefs, so beautiful, and the scientific paper that came out. And Gil and I started on an artistic project as well. And this is what was presented in the opening night of the World Economic Forum, I'm proud to say. The whole show that maybe some of you saw called I See You, whoever's part of the forum, but it will be developed, I see you as SEA, I see you. We're going to develop that into an entire artistic program where the idea is to create this association, deep emotional association between ourselves and the sea.
Catalyst for change.
A catalyst for change. So that's and then you have this triangle, right? Mm-hmm. Triangle is science, research, science, diplomacy, which enables the things to come together, and art, which opens the heart. And this is a very solid and beautiful triangle that I believe if we really, really work for every one of these 3 points, we can make a change.
Wow, that's such an inspiring. Thank you very much, Noah, for all the work that you are doing for the reef corals. That's critical for our environment and it's critical for the future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Gil, I want to go more into a personal question with you. I wanted to ask you, what have been the main milestones in your career that have shaped who you are now?
I'm too young to answer that. Only 70 years old. Well, first, my father was a scientist, a botanist dealing with the genetics of cotton and other industrial crops. But he was a really accomplished classical pianist. And he was Hungarian and really a child prodigy way back then. And I grew up with the sounds of the most beautiful music. I remember from age 3, the aria, opening aria from the Goldberg Variations. I could whistle it or sing myself to sleep with it, and so on and so forth. So the virus of music was, I got it right there and then. And then I went to study way later. I went to study music at the Berklee College of Music in Boston, and then in Queens College, New York, with both disciplines of jazz and classical music, and trying to see that the magic of music is one. Like I think Duke Ellington said.
Yeah. There's 2 types of music.
There are 2 types of music. The good one and all the rest. We're trying to, and that connects to what Noah said. My fascination with polyphony, to the effect that it controls everything we do, etc., etc. And then I came back to Israel and helped to establish this Rimon School of Music that you mentioned, and that was the 3rd big station that changed my life, because at that school I met a brilliant student. And I had, no really, and this is a very serious matter. We did a concert very similar to what you just saw. Just guitar and voice. It was a student-teacher collaboration in a tiny festival. And I was so impressed with her performance and what we managed to do that I went home. And 3 o'clock at night, I picked up the old telephone, no cell phone, and I called a friend who's the amazing Pat Metheny, if you know who he is, one of the biggest, 50 Grammys nominated, winner in jazz, really master figure, and somebody I knew from the Berklee School of Music back then. And I told him that I just met an incredibly talented performer, and I have to add to that the most important thing. Most people don't know. They see a man and a woman, and they think that the guy is the composer and everything else with the music, and maybe she writes the lyrics. But that's not the case. Noah is the composer of 97% of the 30-year music that we do together, although her main instrument, like as it should be, is her voice. You heard her improvising melodies and lyrics just like that on the spot. We have a project now of doing it for a full program without anything prepared. Mm-hmm. But what I could bring in is also what you saw is the arrangement, the harmonization, the counterpoints, and all that. And together we formed this amazing coalition. So this school for music, that's also a big lesson. When you come, there are no teachers and students. They're just people sharing knowledge. This is like, go back to the old Greek days of Aristo and Plato. The academy is just a bunch of guys exchanging ideas, some older with some more experience and some with genius. Anyway, so
such a genius. What are you talking about?
So this one concert brought us immediately from zero, from nothing, to Los Angeles, to Pat Metheny. The great Pat took us by hand and flew us over to David Geffen and said, you got to sign these guys. So from nothing, we were signed in LA, and we started our international career. So obviously I didn't go back to school, although I was the dean of curriculum and I established it, but I was on the road all the time.
But I can tell you, I stayed in school for 30 years with him. I have about 17 PhDs now. I got the teacher, and it's a classroom, and it never ends. There's always something to learn from this amazing man. I'm so lucky, really.
This is our thing. And I have to say one more thing very important. Being the old man that I am, I knew Israel way, way better than Noah, because she was practically a new immigrant having grown up in New York. So she came as a, almost teenager. Mm-hmm. And then she started school, and it was brilliant, nice. But she knew very, very little about the conflict, about everything that's going on around. So airplanes, a very important station in our lives, because that's where we talked for hours, that I was mentoring her to understand what's happening. And she was like, oh, I got to start reading everything about it because I was feeding her information. So that's true. Musical collaboration is never only musical. It's always a whole mind collaboration about everything. We talk about philosophy, about science, about politics, and of course about music. So.
Thank you for sharing that story.
See now why I'm working with him for 30 years?
Wow.
There's always something to learn and to open them. It's so fascinating. It's never boring. It's so great. I'm so lucky. Yeah.
What a partner.
Yeah. And just to make sure that you know, we're not married. We have a musical marriage. But I have a wonderful... That same guy that I met at age 16, I married and have 3 beautiful children with him. So I married my childhood sweetheart, and Gil has an incredible wife, children and grandchildren.
5.
Yes.
Actually, our spouses are arriving tomorrow.
Yeah.
To continue to have some good time.
Before closing this session, because I know we're on time, Noah, I would like to ask you that you give us a message because we are living in a huge crisis. It seems like even though we want to provoke change, sometimes we see that nothing is happening. Right. But you have inspired a lot of people. You have created your own foundation. Yeah. And you have really started making things happening. Yeah. So what would be your message?
Wow. Well, yeah, it's good that you reminded me to talk about the foundation that is on in the name of this session, Noah's Ark. We created a foundation called Noah's Ark. Of course, the Noah My Noah is the feminine version of Noah. She was the first feminist in the Bible, by the way, which is, most people don't know. Most people are familiar with the Noah with the H. He's the man with the ark and all that. So we put those two concepts together. In Noah's Ark Foundation, we have a lot of projects. ICU and Reefs of Hope is part of it. It's really basically a home for all of the activity we've been doing for a quarter of a century that has to do with the marriage between music and values. And we really believe that those two things must go hand in hand, and you can imagine them going hand in hand onto the ark over the turbulent waters of the world we live in and transporting us to a place of peace where we find the dove and the rainbow. That's the idea of Noah's Ark. You're very welcome to find out more about our foundation and be part of it. You know, we need volunteers, we need members, we need angels, whatever you want to be. You're welcome to join us. And so for that message, I think the first thing I would say, even though I've sort of been giving you messages here for the first moment, but some more, why not? First thing I would say, that, you know, every single person can do something. And sometimes when we look at something so overwhelming and daunting, like the climate crisis or the big crises in the world, then we shrivel, you know, like the corals, you know, they go back into their little shells and that's it. And only when the coast is clear, they come out, you know. The coast is not going to be clear, let me tell you. It's going to stay like this for a good while, so don't go into the shell. Come out and see what you can do. I really, truly believe that every single tiny contribution is significant. Imagine if every single human being contributed just a tiny bit. Recycle. Change your car if you can to an electric vehicle. You know, tell a friend about something. Volunteer for some organization. Talk about it. You know, make sure that it's important. Don't, you know, if you find a climate denier, invite them to coffee and talk to them about it. Let's, you know, have that conversation. That's really important. Choose something. Choose something that you're passionate about. Like me, you know. Okay, coral reefs are not. Sorry, you know, I heard some people, amazing people in Davos, in this forum, talking about things that need to be done. There are big things to do. You know, carbon capture and all of that. And I have to say that I was very encouraged to listen to some very powerful people saying amazing things about what they're dedicated to doing, either by pledging their money or their resources or their research or the knowledge to try to solve these problems. There are people working on that. That's encouraging, and it's important to be also encouraged. But it's not enough to say the politicians or the billionaires or the policymakers should do the work. No, no. We all have to do the work, you know? Even if it's just the vote you put in there. You live in a democracy, that's a privilege. Vote for the people who will do the job and do your little thing. So, you know, top, bottom, the whole thing has to work together. And the second thing I would say, you know, if I could point at something that really, really I think we need to get rid of is greed. We have to stop it. We have to stop. We have to, I don't like that word. I hate it. I would erase it from every language. Greed. No, 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 no. Generosity. Open the heart. Reach out. You are the big receiver when you do that. It'll come back to you big time. I believe in that so deeply. Even if you don't exactly see it at that moment, even if it's not like one-to-one, but when you open and you are generous and you give and you see the other and you share knowledge, possessions, light, it reflects back on you. And then life becomes beautiful. And I truly believe life is beautiful.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you. And Gil, any final remarks that would you like to share with us?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
We normally speak like the same person, so I guess I'd represent both of us saying that.
Okay, thank you very much, Noah. Thank you, Gil.
Thank you.
We are very, very happy to have you here.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. Sure. No problem.
We would like to ask the audience if you have any questions.
Or any contributions or just things you want to say. We'd be happy to hear you. Don't be shy. What a shy group. Oh my God. Is that a Swiss thing? Here, there's a microphone, dear. Thank you.
Sorry. I would like to thank you. Thank you for such a great energy. Thank you for your kind words. And thank you for the message, and especially message about peace. Peace between Palestine and Israel, Russia and Ukraine, and all the countries, all the people in the world.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. There's somebody back there.
Thank you very much. We were lucky to enjoy it during our Davos lab, Noah. I want to go back to your project about the corals. It's great what you're doing there. I know the place in Egypt. There are places near Australia, there may be more. I mean, is there a next step to make it like the world movement, to have it over different seas? And maybe it should be not only about corals, but different sea flora is in big trouble.
So yes, the sea in general needs to be protected. I have to say that one of the encouraging things, maybe you know, is that in Montreal just recently there was a pledge by the international community to protect 30% of the world's oceans. And that is a big deal. You know, hopefully that will happen. Yes, there's so many things that need addressing, but like I say, you know, I can't solve all of the world's problems, though I wish I could. I've chosen one that is close to my heart, that is in my neighborhood, that involves the possibility for a dialogue between these countries and these specific coral reefs. I have to tell you that there are many projects around the world that are centered on reefs, that are centered on ocean health, on marine preservation and protection, and that's very encouraging and beautiful. And these projects work in synergy. And there are also international organizations, you know, overarching, that would either assist financially or assist with knowledge or with the kind of diplomacy needed for these things. It's encouraging. And there have been successes. You know, today, for example, we were reminded about the Arctic Pact that happened in 1959. The Arctic Pact happened between countries that were not getting along in any way. I think Russia was one of them. There was war. The war had just, you know, it was an era of war. The Cold War, you know, and then so, but despite the differences and the animosity, you know, an agreement was reached about that Arctic Ocean, which is a huge step forward for humanity, which makes me also, you know, hopeful that maybe in our area, where the struggles are, they're struggles, but they're not anywhere next to those horrible wars that were fought. Maybe we can also achieve that. So I think that connects to what I was saying. Choose your cause. Choose something that you're passionate about and go for it. And then all those pieces will come together. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Anybody else?
Any other questions? Comments?
Don't be shy.
I have one comment. One of the things that really sustains our hope, just like that example, is even a tougher example, I would say, or a more dramatic example about how quickly things can change, and that is from the experience of the Jewish people. Look, I mean, at the relationship between Israel, Jewish people, and Germany. And remember that the relationship, the correction of the relationship, was starting in the 50s. Just a few years after the most horrible trauma humanity has known. Or one of them, there are many. We have to acknowledge them all, by the way. But I know my people. And then, you know, we thought about it many times. Noah and I performed in Munich in this huge auditorium.
Oh, yeah.
Huge, like 10,000 people, whatever. And the promoter was a very famous Jewish promoter in Germany who stayed there after the war and became one of the kings of the, you know, the business, our business. And he came like with tears. He was very old at the time already. And he grabbed us just before we went on stage. And he said, Gil, Noah, do you know what happened? What is the date today and what it is? This is the day of Kristallnacht. And we were like shocked. And we thought, is that possible that years later, here are two Israelis performing for thousands of Germans, and life is beautiful. So that's a theme that these are the strong examples that make us hopeful, that even in the most catastrophic things, maybe like in 10 years, 5 years, less or more, things can be fixed. And this is an important message, and this is how we feel about the ocean and the climate. We all have to think, we must believe that the goals set, we all have to, like she said, each and everyone has to contribute an effort so that the goals are reached. Because if we don't put the pressure from downwards, maybe they won't. It's a responsibility, not just optimism.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, and I think we close this session with hope and optimism. Thank you very much.
Thank you for dear
Have a
friends.
good night.
תודה רבה. תודה רבה.